If you've just joined us, you're watching Newslink on DSTV channel 403. Now, after forking out nearly 600 million rand, the Gauteng government is walking away from the Anglogold Ashanti hospital. The original estimated cost for the COVID-19 critical care facility was 50 million rand, but this figure ballooned to 588 million. Premier Panyaza Lesufi wants law enforcement to investigate and try to recoup the money. Let's speak to Jack Bloom from the Democratic Alliance in Gauteng. Mr. Bloom, good morning and thank you very much for your time. This Anglo Ashanti story is honestly disturbing. From 50 million, the refurbishments escalated to 588 million. And now we have government choosing to abandon the hospital. What exactly is happening here?
Well, I think in the first place it was a massive political blunder that, in fact, I warned about in the Gauteng legislature. I said, why are you spending so much money on a donated hospital? And it turned out it hadn't even really been donated. So they hadn't actually owned the building. And why are you spending so much money in out-of-the-way area when other hospitals need it more? So in the first place, it's a political blunder. Now they're trying to find scapegoats with officials. And, of course, it appears that there's been massive corruption, and I think there should be accountability for this. They're just abandoning this hospital, and it treated hardly any patients and should never have gone ahead in the first place.
You state that it was donated. I mean, we initially understood that it was a donation as well, but then now we understand that it actually they're refusing to hand it over, and actually there's some sort of a lease involved. I mean, surely the former premier would have to account for this, because it was open to much fanfare and we all understood it to be a previous mine hospital that is now being donated to the government.
Well, that's correct, and questions were asked in the legislature about this thing, and I was told that, in fact, the entire Provincial Executive Council took the decision to expand this hospital. Now, that Executive Council includes...
Mr. Bloom? Oh, we seem to have lost Mr.
Premier Lesufi, who was education accountability decision at the time when, and I really think Mr. Lesufi must take accountability for going along with it in the first place as well.
Because he seems to be somebody that's quite disheartened right now and saying at the very least they're going to take the SIU route, walk away from it, but somehow attempt to recoup some sort of funds. But what do you recoup here? Because they refurbished somebody else's property to the tune of 588 million. You cannot necessarily remove some of those renovations. What do you recoup here?
Well, I think they're going to try and get money from the contractors who made money out of this. And the SIU has been quite successful with this in civil actions, but typically they can only get a fraction of the money. So quite frankly, they've blown 500 million rand at least on this hospital. Just imagine what that money could have been spent at our other hospitals. The patients are really suffering in our hospitals because many hospital buildings are falling apart, and they're spending 500 million rand on a hospital that they're now walking away from completely, when it was obvious from the start that they should never have refurbished it.
It's honestly unfortunate, because just last week we had you on the show and we were speaking about Lentz Hospital, which is under-resourced. They surely could have spent most of that money in some of these hospitals that clearly don't have the adequate resources. But insofar as Anglo Ashanti is concerned, do you believe at this point it's a lost cause, they need to honestly walk away, or they can have some sort of a negotiation where they take the hospital over?
No, I think it's the right decision to walk away from it, unfortunately, because any more money that you pour into it is going to be a further waste. And I said that at the time. I said it was a white elephant hospital, then it became a ghost hospital. Now there's not a single provincial government department that can find any use for it. And now, of course, it turns out that it's in a very high crime area. The hospital's already been vandalized. They can't ensure the safety of anyone there. Why didn't they do the due diligence about this in the first place, instead of rushing into a very ill-advised deal with a property that it didn't even own? So I think there's political accountability here. It's not just former Premier David Makura, it's everybody who was on his executive council, because they took a joint decision, including our present Premier Lesufi.
Let's hope opposition will indeed hold them accountable. Thank you very much for your time this morning. That was the DA Shadow MEC for Gauteng Health, Jack Bloom.